Hey, let's introduce Visual Studio Code then. Now, your Unreal download might be still going or it might have finished by now. Regardless, just leave it for the moment. If you want to open it and have a little look around, no problem, not going to cause any harm. We're going to come to that shortly. But we want to think about Visual Studio Code. Now, Unreal only works with some editors, and I'd like you to all be using the same editor regardless of the platform you're on. The only two things that Unreal works with that are across all three platforms, Mac, Windows, and Linux, at the time of recording are VS Code and Sea Lion. Now, Sea Lion isn't some aquatic animal that makes a sound like this. Rather, it is a product by a company called JetBrains. I'll just quickly show you that up on my screen here now. It is a cross-platform IDE for C and C++, and it's very good. However, it's complex and large, and it's not free. So we're not going to be using that at the moment. We're going to focus on VS Code, and the real power of VS Code is for extensions. That means that it's possible to add to VS Code, customizing it to your needs. So that's what we're going to be doing. All right, remember from several videos back, we talked about the fact that Unreal needs a layer between itself and the file system to help it write C++ code. One of those elements is that, is it hexagonal there? Yeah, hexagonal C++ logo, which represents the compiler, which we've already set up. And then we've also got Visual Studio Code, which is we're going to focus on right now. So I've given you another link, here it is, to a Visual Studio download page. We've actually been here already. This is the very same page we came to get the build tools that installed the compiler. And depending on how wide your browser's set up, somewhere on the page you're going to see the Visual Studio Code free download. So let's go ahead and do that. Just download Visual Studio Code, not to be confused with, if I go back to the other page while it's downloading, not to be confused with Visual Studio, the full IDE integrated development environment, but rather the fast, free, and open source editor that adapts to your needs. Okay? Once that's downloaded, we're going to run it, standard Windows install here, and we're going to use all the standard options as we click through. So I'd like you to do that now as a challenge. I'll close the browser, just leave us at this stage. Very, very simple challenge, of course. I want you to download Visual Studio Code. It's roughly the same process on all platforms. Ensure that it opens. Once it's open, take a look around. It's just a fancy text editor. Although, if you want a bonus exercise, there is no such thing as plain text. So it is a simple text editor, but plain text doesn't exist. And there's a lovely blog attached to this video by Jeff Atwood, the founder of Stack Overflow and also of Discourse, our community forum at community.gamedev.tv. And it's a cool blog called There Ain't No Such Thing as Plain Text. So take a look at that. Get Visual Studio Code downloading. If you're wondering about the options as you click through, just go with the defaults. All right, I'll see you in a second. Hey, welcome back. So let's just take a look. I'm just going to, as I said, go through all the defaults and just install Visual Studio Code. One of those does say that you'd need to restart in order for something to work. It's going to add something to your path, which means that the command line would be able to use Visual Studio Code from the command line to open files. That probably won't work until you restart your computer. But apart from that, it's as good as done. And pretty quick, really. I'm even running in a virtual machine here. My host machine I'm on is actually a Mac, a 5K iMac. It may well open the Visual Studio web page again. It's the same one as when we were downloading. And the thing just to bring your attention to is they talk very quickly in the page about extensions, the way that you can modify Visual Studio Code. And what's fascinating is that the C/C++ extension has gone from zero, what didn't really exist not that long ago, to one of the most popular downloads. So it's really it's moving in that direction. It's becoming a very useful C++ development environment as well. Okay, cool. So this is Visual Studio Code. Let's just take a little look around it. You start on a welcome screen. You may have notifications pop up at the bottom right. You see the little bell icon here. This applies to the very notification above it, and you can dismiss that with an X, pretty clear and obvious. To start with, the bottom right only has the notifications and whether you want to give them feedback via Twitter. But once you actually make a file, let's choose New File, either from this Welcome tab or if for any reason you'd close that Welcome tab, File and New File. Just make up a new file and you'll see a whole load of other stuff. So now that our attention's at the bottom right, let's just look at that. You can choose the format of the file. In our case, we could choose C++ if we want to, and the logo will change up here. You can choose your line sequence, your line ending. Now, this goes back to days of the typewriter. CR stands for carriage return, and LF stands for line feed. So LF means actually moving the paper up the teletype machine, and CR means taking the print head, the carriage, and returning it to the start of the line. Windows and Linux-based systems like macOS, which is historically somewhat Linux-based, or has a similar ancestor, both have different ways of dealing with line endings. Don't worry about it too much. Leave it to the program. I just want to tell you what CRLF means. It's carriage return line feed. UTF-8, this is the bit about no such thing as plain text. a file on your machine is a series of ones and zeros. When you open it in a text editor, it assumes it is encoded a certain way. Now, usually that'll be UTF-8, but it could be UTF-8 with byte order marker, BOM, or a whole load of other possible encodings. And when you get weird characters coming up, that's because the encoding's wrong. Take a look at that blog against the video if you're interested. Then we get to choose and have a big argument about whether we're spaces or tabs. I don't know if you've seen the Silicon Valley TV series episode where there's a whole argument about whether you should use tabs or spaces, but at times we indent our code. So if we say hello here and then we hit tab, then I'm indented. And you'll notice that this is 4 spaces because that's how it's set. That's fine for the moment. Also notice that this thing is already starting to put color to things because it's trying to work out what I'm typing and guide me to type the right things. That's that. Line column is simply what it says. So if I've got a bunch of junk in here, then it tells me which column number I'm on, column 5, 5 characters in, and line 8. All right. The other thing you might notice is as we add more and more data, Lorem 1, oh, it's not working in this operating system, but as we add more and more, you have like an overview, an X-ray view at the top right here, which just shows you the shape of the file if it's too long to fit on one screen. So that's the bottom right. Bottom left we won't worry about. Apart from the cog, we can get to the command palette, which is everything that we can do in Visual Studio Code, settings, and your color theme. They would be the 3 things that I think you might want to pay some attention to. Then moving on the left-hand side, we have extensions. In fact, while we're clicked on extensions, let's look for the C++ extension. So type C++ after clicking on extensions. Find this one here. The code is ms-vscode.cpptools. You can't search for that, but if you're on the right one, then you'll see that. You'll see it's from Microsoft. You'll see it'll have, probably by the time you're watching this, over 18 million downloads. Just go ahead and install that. You just click the green install button. See a little whizzy gig along here saying that it's doing it. And that's installing an extension which is going to beef up Visual Studio Code for us so that it can help us with C++ code. So while that's happening, we've got the idea of a debugger, which we won't concern ourselves with now. You may have notifications come on at the bottom right where it downloads other things to help the C++ extension work. So out the box, Visual Studio Code really is pretty much just a text editor, a fancy text editor. And now that we've installed that extension, it's going to do some more for us, which we'll see in future videos as we start typing C++. So debugging we're not going to deal with for the moment, nor are we going to deal with source control, which is tracking the changes to your files. This is a search facility, very powerful, but we won't worry about it for now. And then the top left is the Explorer, which shows you what files are open. We've actually got 3 files open at this stage now. We've got the untitled file, which is unsaved. You see the little dot. When I go to try and close it, it's a dot. If I was to save it, Control-S or from the File menu, and just call it test, you'll see that that dot goes away, a fairly standard paradigm in modern software. So we have a test file, but we also had a couple of other files open, which are document files. So we've actually got 3 files open at the moment. Okay, so that's how that works. You can close them with the X. Then a standard set of menus we won't delve into right now. The only other kind of gotcha or thing that you might want to know about is that you have a little tab button at the top right there. I don't know if you saw where I clicked here. And that thing, which is called Split Editor Right, you may end up with a bunch of different editors, possibly with the same things in them like this. If you end up in this kind of mess, just close down the tabs in the other extra panes with the X's, and you'll be back to where you are. I think that's really all I need to tell you at the moment. So have a quick look around VS Code, get your C++ extension installed. I'll just leave that on the screen so you can see exactly which one it is, this one here. And that's it. Have a little play, maybe save out a text file, and any questions or anything cool you find about it, share that with the community, and I'll see you in the next video.